Chapter 1. The Worm in the Weir. This story begins, as many often do, with a boy. John Lambton was heir to his father's estate in County Durham. Being brought up in privilege, he often thought that rules did not apply to him. He grew up watching others abide by his father's dictates as lord of the manor, but not once did he think he had to do likewise. Consequently, he often rebelled against common courtesy and the expectations of how the son of a lord should conduct themselves. One Sunday, instead of spending it as required in church and contemplation, John decided to go fishing and took himself off to the nearby River Weir. Unfortunately, he had plenty of time for contemplation, as the fish, strangely, were not biting that day. The river was unusually sluggish, and the air was heavy and oppressive. After some time, his gaze drifted, and he struggled to keep his eyelids from drooping. So he decided to pack up and head for home. But just then, there was a tug on his line, short, sharp, and strong. John jumped to his feet and began to pull up his line. He was anticipating that it would be a sizable fish, and after what seemed like hours, John could see a shape writhing at the end of his line. He gave one last almighty tug, and breaking the surface of the water was his prize. As John held up his prize, he was astonished that A, he had struggled so much to land it, and B, it was not a fish at all. It was as long as his arm at least, but it wasn't an eel, not one that John had ever seen. It was rather thin and had a substantial head, which was taken up mostly by a wide mouth full of sharp-looking teeth. And John could see the teeth because the creature had ceased its writhing and was looking at him. Then it opened its mouth and hissed. John staggered back slightly until his legs were pressed up against the old stone well adjacent to the river. As he stared at the creature, he noticed that it had 9 holes on either side of its head. He assumed it was for breathing, like gills. Its body was long and tapered into a flat, wide tail that would presumably propel it through the water. The skin of the creature was covered in scales that shimmered iridescent hues of blue and black. However, the scales were slightly raised and rough, not smooth like a fish, and ended in a point interlaced so they covered the entire creature from its snarling mouth to its swiping tail. The creature was certainly fascinating, but because John was a practical boy and not given to overthinking, he concluded that it would not make good eating. He shrugged and threw the unfortunate creature over his shoulder and into the well behind him. He collected his things and headed for home. No doubt he would get in trouble for not attending church, but it wasn't anything he hadn't heard before. All thoughts of the creature were pushed from his mind by the time he had left the wood and the manor house was in sight. He failed to notice, however, a black hooded figure in the tree line at the bend in the river watching him and the interaction with the creature that he threw into the well. The figure watched John until he was out of sight, shaking its head as it returned to the trees because it knew something that John did not.